Hello there, guys, and welcome back to the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. As you know, my name is Nicole. I'm so excited. I didn't ask you how to pronounce your name correctly, so we're just going to go for it. Tigrilla?
Close enough.
Close enough.
Tigrilla,
Okay.
Tigrilla, like they
Oh,
all work.
Tigrilla,
Yeah.
perfecto. Even better. Okay, that makes
Yep.
more sense. Okay, well, welcome, Tigrilla. My name, as you guys know, like I said, is Nicole, and I'm just gonna go ahead and let you take it away because you told me that one of the things you do is helping people befriend their limiting beliefs. Everybody wants to hear
Right.
what that means. So take it away. Tell us who you are, who you help, and then let us know about befriending our limiting beliefs.
Yeah, hi. Super happy, super excited to be here. So, I am a nature inspired mentor and a certified life coach. And really, what I do more than anything is help people feel, especially people who really feel like they can't accomplish anything. They have so many ideas. I mean, I work mainly with creative multi-potentialites, and I help them then find a way to interconnect all of the passions that they have into one thriving life. And the way I do this is I work very closely with plants intelligence and with plants in general. So plants are really my guides, the working with nature and beings of nature and recognizing ourselves as a being of nature so that you can stop questioning the things that are going on in your life and recognize that if I'm a natural being, this means that whatever it is that I'm experiencing is absolutely natural. So it's more of shifting then the perspective into what is it that I actually want to accomplish? How can I work with this? How can I use everything that I am to the best of my abilities? So that's the big piece to shift you from feeling like something is wrong. I'm a procrastinator. I'm not somebody who knows, how to do things, and instead recognize that you have these unconventional ideas, these really multiple ways of doing things, and that it's about finding the way to weave these all together to create the life that you really want. And one of the things that came, in this work, working so closely with plants, is the concept of the fact that we tend to think of our limiting beliefs as something that we need to get rid of, something I need, all the vocabulary is, how do you, let go or release or, change or transform. And our limiting beliefs are, in reality, I think of them as big bodyguards. They're bodyguards that we placed in front of a set of talents and of skills that we didn't know how to use. And so in the past, they created some kind of problem for us. So maybe you have this fear of money, but it's because you grew up hearing from your parents that people who have a lot of money are corrupt. And therefore, you were afraid that your skills at making money would make you corrupt. So, what do? You take this big bodyguard, you put this bodyguard on the door, and you say to this bodyguard, do not let me make money. Because if I make money, I'm going to become corrupt. And so, this bodyguard, who's kind of super powerful, but kind of dumb, says, okay, I'm just going to stand there. And so every time you try to make money, this bodyguard says, nope, nope, and is guarding that door and is saying, the talents and skills that I have inside there, I'm not going to let you access. And so it really is about recognizing that this bodyguard was somebody you put in place, was a part of you that you put in place because something happened. It's not a fake thing. You really did believe at some point in your life that you would become greedy and that you would become somebody corrupt if you had a lot of money. So it's about going up to that bodyguard and saying, hey, by the way, why did I put you here? What are you protecting me from? What is it that I can, that has changed in my life so that you no longer have to protect me? And that doesn't mean getting rid of the bodyguard. On the contrary, saying, hey, bodyguard, oh, okay, I told you that I would become corrupt. Here's all the ways in my life that I have grown, evolved, changed, learned. So I am very confident now that I'm not going to be corrupted by money. So you and I are friends. Here's the deal. I won't become corrupt. If I do become corrupt, you block my money thing again. Like I'm giving you permission. But now that I'm aware of the reason I put you there, I'm telling you that you have my permission also to step aside, unless what it is that I was still afraid of comes back for whatever reason. So it's about going up to all of these limiting beliefs and looking at them and saying, you and I are friends. And rather than me blindly putting you here, I want to work with you so that the trauma or the incident or the fear doesn't come back. But also, I want to be able to have a conversation with you that says, here are all the things I've done in my life so that you don't have to block me anymore. You don't have to be there, and I can actually access the talents that are there. So that's really the heart of the process of befriending that limiting belief, of looking at that limiting belief as an important bodyguard, of really understanding that you put them there for a good reason. And then also working with the bodyguard to understand that that reason is no longer valid. There's no need for that bodyguard to still be there to block it. I used to work when I went back way back in the days when I actually lived in South Florida and in Miami. I was a bodyguard for a while, and I had done it also in Seattle when I used to produce events. And I was a person who worked the door. The guard at the door is super important, but it doesn't mean they don't let people in. The best bodyguards know who to let in, people who are safe, people who are going to help you get ahead, who are going to help you move in the direction, and they also know when to block. And what we want to do by creating this relationship is to recognize and be able to be conscious of and aware of when to let through and access those talents and those skills, and when to block.
That is so, so, so good. Like fantastic. It's such great imagery to help us. Like immediately I thought of, do you remember the Mario movie?
Yeah.
The one back in the 90s, right? With John
Right.
Leguizamo. And those big turtle things, that they did
Hmm.
such not a good job of of making these characters. But those big guys, that's what I thought of, that they're really big and they're just kind of like, I'm just gonna stand here because that's what they told me to do.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's it. We don't realize that we did it on purpose. Like we always think that our limiting beliefs are about something that's irrational or such. But there was a time when it was totally rational. And even some of our biggest limiting beliefs, like I feel unworthy, oftentimes those were created to protect us from something else. Like maybe we had unwanted attention that we didn't know how to deal with, right? So by making myself feel unworthy, I keep away the attention of somebody that I don't know how to control. Or maybe something I did have a trauma that happened to me, like my family, there was some kind of abuse or something. So by saying I'm unworthy, I make myself small and I make myself invisible. Like there are lots of reasons why these traumas or these experiences, but we work on them, but then we forget to talk to the limiting belief. We forgot to say, hey, I am a different person today than when I put you here. So you don't have to protect me anymore from this, from this, from this, and this. But if this thing happens again, you sure as hell should protect me. Like you make sure you stand up nice and big and strong. You put those wings out, you just block everything that comes in. But now, rather than me, because when I was younger and I probably created this limiting belief, I did it in a moment of fear. I did it in a moment of, some kind of not feeling safe or not feeling like I could be whatever it is that I needed to be. So I give you a broad mandate. I just said block everything. Now that I know myself, that I have worked on myself, that I understand my talents, my skills, and maybe those things that you're holding on to, I can deal with and I can work with. So let's give you a very narrow range. Let's just say, in these circumstances, block me. In these circumstances, shut it down, but also warn me. That way I can work on it. So it's not
Yeah.
about at all getting rid of. It's not about letting go. It's about working with.
I love that. So you're not firing them. You're changing their assignment and you're saying, "Hey, I have a
Exactly.
different job for you."
Exactly.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. And I stumbled into this. I don't remember what it was, but I remember having to have a talk with myself and being like, "Thank you for keeping me safe.
Hmm.
You have kept me safe up to this point, and the reason that you are not letting me make money, like to get off your example, um, is because you're trying to keep me safe. Money means a lot of things. Money can mean like people can take it away, corruption, it can mean all these things. But now, in this moment of my life, what is going to keep us safe, in your example, is making more money. And so
Exactly.
now we need to focus on that because money is what's going to help us, in this sense of safety. Money will help us. Like that's the only thing that's going to pay all the things and keep
Right.
us like safe, right?
Right,
And we
right,
got
right.
food and we've got all the things, right? And so it's shifting that and giving it a different assignment. Um,
Absolutely.
because because it's not that you won't make the money. You can make the money, but you will spend it all immediately. It will be gone before you know it. And you will be like, what happened? And that is your limiting belief keeping you safe. So you
Yep.
have to deal with these things. You can't say, oh, I'll deal with it when I make 100 grand. No, bro, it's gonna
Yeah.
suck because just a little bit after you make that 100 grand, you're gonna be like, where did it go? And you'll be like, oh shit, I have to deal with all of these things so that I can actually keep it. So
Yeah.
that's such a big deal. So, Tigria, tell me, what are some tips that you have? Or we've been talking about this fear of money. So, what are some tips that you have to help us overcome this? I guess there's another one of those, one of those words. In this process, right? Because we have to establish boundaries. We have to start getting healthy. We have to set our values so that we don't become corrupt, right? Like this is the line of where I'm willing to go.
Right.
So, can you give us some tips along those lines of how we carry this out in our day to day?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so really when we're working from the perspective of our limiting beliefs, we want to create what I think of as an ecosystem. So I work a lot with plants and I look and I observe and I spend a lot of time with plants. And the thing about plants that's amazing is their ability to be an ecosystem, right? It's kind of like I'm solo, I'm an independent, but I'm also always connected to everything around me. And those relationships are really what keeps us the healthiest, right? The understanding that I am an interrelated being. I'm always interrelating with other people. So when I go up to that limiting belief and I say, oh, okay, what are you holding me back from? What is it that you're actually blocking me from? You're blocking me from my abilities to make money, let's say, and we're talking about it. And like you said, then it's a matter of going up and saying, do you remember what the hell I was like worried about? Like what was it that what I was creating, like that had made me scared about the idea of my ability to make money. And so let's say that they say that, like, when you get money, you spend it. And then what happens is that rather than letting you spend it and just feel the hole, I don't even let you make it because you might get us into trouble. Right? You might end up buying a house that then we lose our house. And by that point, we don't have any money. And therefore, you're out on the streets. So I can't allow that to happen. So I block you at all. So working, and then it's about looking at, okay, now I have to evolve, like you said, that aspect of myself. So if I think about it from a plant's perspective and I think, okay, how do I create the ecosystem? What is the support system that I have to create around myself to understand how to deal with that real problem that it is? Like the fact that I have this relationship with money, that I might spend it. And then again, what is it that I'm spending it from? Like, why is it that I'm doing all these different things? So a lot of this is about know thyself, right? We always talk about this, but not looking at yourself as something that's wrong with you, which I think is our issue, but it's around getting to that core fear and creating the environment around myself where that fear gets supported so that I can actually look at it with, deep self-honesty, self-trust, and I can then work on it. So what do I need around me in order to ensure that, for example, when I do get money, I don't just spend it away. Like there has to be something that I'm missing in the ecosystem that takes me into this other direction. So working very closely with your limiting belief is not just a matter of get out of the way, but it's more like, okay, like you said, okay, dude, I put you here. So now that I've put you here, please tell me why I put you here. Like, did I tell you at all? And then, okay, don't block me, don't unblock me yet. I still have things that I need to work on. So, in the practical sense, it's about also not going too fast and allowing yourself to go in stages to say, okay, you were worried about this piece. I have taken care of this piece. This is how I have created a support system. So, for example, if I do waste money, and that's my big thing, I might go to a good friend of mine and say, hey, you are somebody that I love and I trust. So, if I start to get myself in trouble with my spending, you have my permission to tap me on the shoulder and say, yo, what's going on here? If instead it's a different type of problem relating to it, like maybe I become mean, maybe I become selfish. Okay, Where did that come from? And who can I work with to help me and support me through that? So it is about preemptively, before you even take the block out of the way, because oftentimes when we work with limiting beliefs, we think the most important part is to remove the block. And it's like, no, the block has its purpose. What's more important is, did I create the ecosystem, the actual support system? Do I have the relationships in place? I'll give you a different example that's not the money example, but that often happens. Many people who have, for example, imposter syndrome is because there could be multiple different areas of sources to that. One could be the soul wound of humiliation, right? I'm afraid that if I put myself out there, I am going to be humiliated. So all of my talents that show how smart I am or how athletic I am or how great I am, I hide behind this imposter syndrome because I am worried that if I make a mistake, I am going to be humiliated. And if I have this soul wound of humiliation, then I'm never going to recover. The humiliation is worse than staying small. So now I say, okay, I haven't even looked at that. What do I need in order to be somebody who can make mistakes in public and not feel bad about it, like feel really happy about it? And then you start working kind of backwards. So that's why I say it's all about the relationship and the support system around you, and recognizing that if I create, like I might say to that limiting belief, okay, in this case, I'm okay with making a public mistake. I don't actually care. So let's unblock that piece. But over here, don't unblock it in another way. So it is a sort of almost surgical response, right? I'm now looking and I'm creating and I'm having this relationship where I am looking at different ways to work with my own talents and to understand what my talents are in that aspect. Another way that this manifests itself and that you can work on is, many times the things we're blocking from are actually things that society might have told us are a problem, but in reality are a strength. And so that's the other piece, the way to work on it. For example, I'm an extremely critical person. I'm critical. I can like break up something down. I've used it for some horrible things in my life. Like, I have to admit that. I have cut people down and judged them and done all kinds of different things when I was younger. So I put a block in there that meant I didn't allow myself, like I became this pushover that had to be super sweet, because I was afraid that if I tried to, show you the problems of a project or of something you were working on, it was going to come out in a way that I broke, I just broke it. And people were going to tell me, you're just mean and you're a bitch, you're all these types of things. So what did I have to do? I had to work, first of all, on my communication skills. Like, do I know how to give constructive criticism? I had to recognize that the fact that I break things down isn't always bad. Sometimes it's so important. Somebody who can look at a project and show you all the problems with the project, that is a massive skill that saves people money and time and energy. Now, I can't say you're an idiot because you didn't get it. If I recognize that what I have is a superpower, then I realize, oh my goodness, you can't see this. Of course. Oh, no, no, not a problem. Let me just show you. Let me help you solve it because I see it. So then I can go to the limiting belief and be like, oh, this criticism, I know now how to talk to people in a way that's encouraging and exciting and fun. And I can make them see that they made a mistake, but that's a learning experience, instead of telling them that they're morons, which is something I would have done in the past, like without any doubt.
Yeah.
So then I can go work on it. So it's not always something like, sometimes it is from a trauma. Sometimes it's a personality characteristic that society has put a label on, and that you have to recognize what it is, that how it can be useful. And then you go to the block and you say, unblock me, because now I know how to be critical without being demeaning or judgmental or rush or anybody that would hurt others. But instead, I can use this as a superpower itself. And now give me access to my ability to be super critical, because I've worked on my communication skills and on my self-worth, so that therefore my criticality now becomes an asset, which is what happened to me. And now people look for me because they want me to work on their projects because they know that I'm going to give them the truth, and I'm going to help them see how to fix their projects. And I'm going to help them, look at how they're working and the things that they want to accomplish in life. But I say it in a way that's about enthusiasm, about curiosity, about I had to find all of those other characteristics that complement my personality of criticism rather than highlight the negativity of it, but instead bring out that negative part of criticism with so many good traits that you want to go into that negative piece, because that negative piece helps me see things that I am missing for certain other parts.
I love that. I love that so much. I love how you broke that down. And that's one of the big themes in my book is what is that thing that you consider your weakness that everybody told you was a weakness, that what was written on your report cards? Talks
Right?
too much was one of
That's
mine, right?
me.
Like always
Me. Me.
talking.
Grasp
Like
concepts easily and then talks too much. That was
she
it. That
gets
was
A's
always.
on her homework. I mean, she gets A's on
Exactly.
her test, but she doesn't do her homework. It doesn't matter where I put her. She talks to everybody. Like it was
Yep.
just always, right?
I got put
And
against the board. I literally
yeah,
got put at the very front of the class against the actual blackboard. Back then we had blackboards. So that was great.
I remember being in class when the construction workers came to take down the blackboards and put up whiteboards.
That's so funny.
And then they switched to the markers, but I remember having to go outside and
Oh
dust.
yeah.
Yes. Just random question. Are you of Cuban descent?
Of course. Of
Course,
course.
yes.
Of course.
We are very harsh, and it's not
Yep.
on purpose. And like it just the way that it translates, right? Because in Spanish, like in Cuban families, at least in my Cuban families, what I've noticed is that whatever your biggest insecurity is, that's what your nickname becomes. I was gorda,
Absolutely.
right? If you have a big head, you're
Mine was
cabezón.
cotorra.
Cotorra, right? Because you talked a lot, right? So your
Exactly.
biggest insecurity, like when you make a mistake, I grew up with my great grandparents because my mom died when I was little. So like I would make a mistake, y tú que eres come mierda, ¿qué te pasa?
Exactly.
Right? Like, it doesn't translate very well. Like, are you a shit eater or what's wrong with you? But it just
Yeah.
means like, are you not paying attention? But it's
Right.
so harsh. And so when we translate that to English and we bring that same pizzazz, like, oh my God, you're such a bitch. Like, I'm just being Cuban. It's
So
not,
I'll
it's
give
not
you a great story about that, because going to
tell me,
exactly
tell
this
me.
communication issue. So I realized exactly what you're saying. So when I moved away from Miami, I went to live in Seattle before I left the country, and now I live in Italy in one of the largest spiritual communities in the world. But when I left and went to Seattle, I had exactly that problem you're talking about, where I was, of course, translating in my head from the way that we spoke in Spanish, which was, it's constructed in the negative, like, aren't you blah blah blah, rather than are you. And then it has this harsh, even though my mother is very polite, but it still has this like pierce to go through
Yes.
certain things. It's part of the culture. So I realized that for me, in order to be successful after I had been unsuccessful in certain business things because of it, I had to work on my vocabulary, so much so that I remember this. I was talking on the phone with my mother as I had her on my wired in her ear thing, and I was talking to her, and she was saying something to me, and I looked at her and I'm like, "Mommy, I love you, but I need a month where I can't talk to you." And she was like, "What do you mean?" I'm like, "It has nothing to do with you. I have to change my vocabulary, and I have to learn how to speak with what I really mean." Because what I'm saying right now is a translation. And like you said, that translation doesn't work in this culture. In Miami, it works because we're all Cuban. We all know. And so you can say all these things to one another and we all laugh about it. And, you kind of get the sense of, oh, you're just teasing me into this. And all of that comes across. But in my culture of that I'm in right now, my work culture and my friendship culture, they don't speak that way. And I need to learn how to speak. So this is a great example of, I did put that limiting belief there, that bodyguard in place. And I said, please don't let me access this, because what's happening is I'm creating moments of uncomfortableness and all these things. And I literally spent a month without talking to my mother, as much as that was hard because I love her and I talk to her her all the time because I knew that I needed time to rewire and to expand my vocabulary so that it wasn't limited to pulling from Spanish and pulling from English. The funny part was I did this work, changed so many aspects of my life. When I went to live in Spain, I had to do the work in Spanish because the Spanish culture wasn't the same as the Cuban culture. And I was having the same problem because I had worked on it in English, but I hadn't worked on it in Spanish. So my
And that's a
Spanish was
totally different
tied.
Spanish.
It's a totally different. And my
Totally
Spanish was
different.
tied to the way I was thinking when I was, when I go back to Miami. And it was really a fascinating work because I had done it. I did it partially. Then I went to live in Italy, which is where I live. So I mainly speak Italian. Nowadays, this just happened to me. So it's beautiful that you bring it up. About a month ago, I was talking to a girlfriend of mine who lives here, who's Spanish. We're working on a project together, and she is Spanish. So we only speak in Spanish. And I went back to that old pattern. And I had to call her one day after we had had a conversation. And I said to her, Oye, I am so sorry. I did not mean to say this in this way. And she's like, oh no, but I know you're Cuban. And I was like, yes, but that's not the Spanish I want to be speaking. Like, it's one thing if it's with my brothers or with my mother, but that is not the Spanish I want to be speaking when I'm out in public. And it's not that I know my intentions on what I was saying to you. She's like, I knew them. And I was like, yes, but that's because you love me as a good girlfriend. But if you were just some person, I went back to that old pattern. And so the block came up. It blocked me from being able to access certain skills. And I recognized it immediately that it was a language issue. And so this is a great example of things that I had worked on in one language, had partially worked on in another, had worked on in the third language that I speak. And yet I went back to the second one and I was like, oh my goodness, I never finished the work. So the block was still there, but it wasn't in the other languages. So don't be also surprised that a limiting belief and a block could be connected to a cultural context, a certain work environment, a certain language. It is not something that is universal across anything. And sometimes you have to learn how to deal with it within a certain context, and it doesn't come up in other contexts.
That's so important, and that's so interesting in the different languages, how it's just just showing the different layers. So little funny anecdote that happened to me because I moved to Georgia, and so the majority of the Spanish speakers there were Mexican. And so
Totally
it's a
different.
totally different Spanish. And so like they said different things, but one day I was speaking to someone that didn't speak Spanish at all, but we, as like as the children of the Spanish speakers, we've translated a lot of our things, and in Miami they make perfect sense in English, right? Like everybody's like, oh, that's fire, eso fuego, eso candela.
Yeah.
That's from us,
Right.
right?
Right.
We've been saying that forever. But though I called somebody one day, or they called me, I don't know, and we got on the phone and like, what are you doing? I was like, oh, eating shit. And you? And they stopped and they were silent. And I was like, hello? And they're like, literally? And I was like, no.
Yeah, exactly.
And I was like, oh my God, I thought that was like a worldly, just something people said, eating shit. And it just meant I'm not doing anything. It's like, comiendo mierda, like nothing, like I'm
Right.
just wasting time. And they did not know what that meant. And so for
Right.
like 5 seconds, they thought I was literally eating shit.
Yeah, exactly.
And so you don't think about those things until you're out in public and somebody looks at you like you have three heads. What do
Absolutely.
you mean? Okay, so
Absolutely.
that every what you've just shown is just such a great example. I realized you can't kiss people on the cheeks. People are like, why are you trying to kiss me? Like, I was just saying hi. Like, that's just how we say hi in Miami, you guys. Like, I wasn't trying to make out with you. I'm
Yep,
sorry.
exactly.
Never
And
again.
so
I had to stop.
And so many of these things, like when I moved to Italy, there was a whole series of these things that I realized it took me a few years before I realized I had created limiting beliefs around certain behaviors that it was because in this cultural context are considered bad. They're
Yeah,
considered like, something you don't do. You're disrespectful when you do them. And so I went through a period of time, and this especially happened to me when I was in Seattle, which, you think I'm American, right? I grew up in the United States, but
I
it's
thought
like, no,
that
you
too.
didn't. We grew up
Yeah.
in North Cuba. And so in North Cuba, there are behaviors that for us are 100% normal. And I didn't realize until years had passed that I had slowly, like, completely blocked myself from parts and access of myself because the cultural norm was different. And therefore, it made it even more difficult to access those parts because I didn't realize that it wasn't that I didn't believe in these characteristics of myself. It was that the cultural norm didn't believe in them, and I was taking on something that wasn't mine. So when you start to approach these things as, no, 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 let me go ask the block itself, what the hell was I thinking? And they say, oh, you put me here to do this. And you're like, oh, wow, I didn't even know that was bad. But
It makes
apparently a
sense.
part of me thought it was bad.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's really a fascinating, and when you look at that and you say to the bodyguard, well, thank you, because I wouldn't have made any friends here had I not done that.
Yeah.
Sure, did it hurt me? Yeah, but it also helped me. And I think that the other thing is being really grateful, especially for some blocks that help block you from traumas or from really negative situations. I've had clients that have, told me about stories of what is a belief today, but that it was really what protected them from damaging their psyche severely based on the way that they were raised and things that were happening in their home. And so sometimes we need to be super grateful to these limiting beliefs because they have protected us from worse damage. They sure have held us back from accessing talents and skills that we have, but in the wrong context, those talents and skills would have created major trauma rather than, just for lack of a better term, the trauma
Yeah.
of the limiting belief instead of a massive trauma that would have come had I tried to access those in, like, oh, this is something I'm good at. And the context is like, absolutely not, type of thing. So we have to be really, there's a lot of gratitude to the limiting belief for what you've been helping me with, and a lot more of the, okay, thank you, I have grown, and also gratitude and appreciation for yourself for the fact that now you can have this conversation with the limiting belief and move the limiting belief out of the way and say, thank you so much, but now you can stand down because I know who I am and I can access all those talents and skills that are hiding behind you.
Oh my gosh, I love that so much. That's one of like my foundation of teaching gratitude. So I love that you brought it up without me having to even ask. And I love the specifics of being grateful for those blocks because we started the conversation. Most people talk about getting rid of them. Well, what if we were
Right.
grateful for you? What if we said, thank you for keeping me safe? And when we
Yep.
started from that, just so different. All right. How can we stay in touch with you?
So I'm super easy, having a very unusual name, Tigrilla Gardenia. So you can just look me up on anything. I am tigrillagardenia.com, at Tigrilla Gardenia on every platform you could probably imagine, except for TikTok. I never got into TikTok, but I got into everything else. So you can find me. I also have a podcast myself, Reconnect with Plant Wisdom. And so you can find me just about anywhere.
That is amazing. And then did you have a gift? I forgot to ask you in the beginning.
So I have a wonderful quiz that is on my website to identify the number one limiting belief that's holding you back. So it's
Mhm.
just tigriagardenia.com/quiz, super easy to find, and it will help you identify one of the four top blocks that are of limiting beliefs that are really holding us, and then it'll walk you through a plant inspired, path to help you start this relationship, create this relationship with that block.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much. And now, as we're signing off, any final tips you have for the audience, your biggest, juiciest tip?
I would say that the biggest, juiciest tip is to recognize that everything about you, even the thing that today you hate, quote unquote, the most about you, is probably useful in the right context. In other words, this isn't about, just as we were talking about the language, you don't stop talking about come mierdas. You just use it in the right context with the right people. In other words, it's all about the dosage. In other words, how much of it do you use? When do you use it? And how do you use it? Once you figure that out, even the thing that today you think you hate the most about yourself, I guarantee you is a useful trait once you figure out where, when, and how much of it to use.
That is fantastic. And you know what? To your point, I think today is the first time I ever said come mierda on my podcast. And so there you
There,
go.
there you go.
The perfect example of the right
I
context. This was totally the right context to be able to say that, right?
Exactly. It's funny that you say it because I was just in Miami visiting my family and I actually used it also. And I was like, I never say that word. But it was true. It was the perfect context. I was talking to my mother about something. I'm like, oye, están comiendo mierda. My mother just looked at me. She's like, I know, right? I
I
was like,
know.
that makes sense, to say it with her.
Yes, exactly. Oh my God, I love it so much. Thank you so much for joining us. This has been absolutely wonderful. And we will catch you guys next time on the next episode of Overcome Yourself, the podcast. Bye.